When people talk about cars that last forever, many names come to mind, but only a handful truly live up to the legend. Among those, there is one vehicle that has achieved cult status around the world. It has been driven by kings and queens, rappers and movie stars, off-road adventurers and soldiers in the most dangerous terrains on Earth. It is a car that combines luxury with durability and power with timeless design. This is none other than the Mercedes-Benz G-Class, also known as the G-Wagon. But behind the luxury badge and celebrity status lies a story of unbelievable strength, reliability and engineering that has made this machine one of the most reliable old Mercedes that will quite literally last forever. Today, we dive deep into the G-Class, especially the iconic W463 generation, to uncover why this SUV is considered unbreakable. The story of the G-Class begins back in the 1970s, when Mercedes-Benz teamed up with Steyr-Daimler-Puch in Austria to design a vehicle that could survive absolutely anything. The military needed a tough, no-nonsense vehicle, something that could handle war zones, extreme weather, mountains, deserts, and jungles. Mercedes answered that call, and in 1979 the very first G-Wagon was born. It was boxy, it was simple, it was rugged, and it had only one mission: to last. The civilian versions came later, but even those were built to military standards. And unlike many vehicles that started tough but softened over time, the G-Class never lost its DNA. It remained one of the strongest SUVs in the world, decade after decade. By the late 1980s, Mercedes decided to refine the G-Wagon for a wider audience. This is where the legendary W463 generation was born in 1990. Unlike the earlier bare-bones models, the W463 combined rugged reliability with a touch of Mercedes luxury. It still had the ladder-frame chassis, solid axles, and locking differentials. That made it unstoppable off-road, but now you could also get leather seats, wood trim, and all the features that made it a Mercedes. This balance of durability and comfort made the W463 an instant success, and it stayed in production for nearly 3 decades, becoming a timeless classic. What makes the G-Class W463 so reliable? It starts with the build quality. The G-Wagon was not designed like a regular car. Every part of it was engineered to take punishment. The doors close with a vault-like thud because they are literally built like the doors of a safe. The frame is made from thick steel, designed to twist and bend without breaking. The suspension is old school and incredibly tough, with components that can be repaired even in remote villages. And the drivetrain was over-engineered to the point that these SUVs could climb 80% gradients and handle side slopes of nearly 54%. Most SUVs today are built for city life. The G-Wagon was built for survival. Then we come to the engines. Mercedes offered the W463 with a wide variety of engines, but some of them became legends for their reliability. The inline-six diesels like the OM606 and the V8 petrol engines like the M113 are known to run for hundreds of thousands of kilometers without issues. In fact, there are many G-Wagons on the road today that have crossed over 500,000 kilometers, and they still run strong. With proper maintenance, it is not uncommon for a G-Class to last over 40 years. That's why owners often pass them down through generations, because these machines refuse to die. The G-Wagon's reliability is not just about mechanical strength, it is also about timeless design. The shape of the G-Class has hardly changed since 1979. It is still boxy, still upright, still instantly recognizable. While other SUVs go out of fashion and get replaced by newer models, the G-Wagon has remained iconic. That means you can own a 30-year-old G-Class and it still looks relevant today. It doesn't feel old, it feels classic. That's a big reason why people keep them forever. But beyond its design and engineering, the G-Class has proven itself in the harshest environments on Earth. Military forces have used it in deserts where temperatures soar to 50 degrees Celsius. Explorers have taken it across the Arctic, through snow and ice that would stop most vehicles in their tracks. Off-road enthusiasts have driven it up mountains, across rivers, and through forests. And in every case, the G-Wagon delivered. It has a reputation for never letting its driver down no matter what. That kind of reputation cannot be bought with marketing. It is earned through decades of performance. Another reason the W463 is considered timeless is the simplicity of its engineering. While it has luxury features, the core of the vehicle is old school. It doesn't rely on complicated electronics. That can fail. The locking differentials, for example, are mechanical and bulletproof. The ladder frame chassis is straightforward and tough. Even if something breaks, it can often be repaired without expensive equipment. That's why the G-Wagon is a favorite in remote parts of the world, where reliability is a matter of life and death. Now let's talk about real-life stories that prove just how tough these machines are. There are documented cases of G-Wagons crossing entire continents without a single breakdown. Owners have taken them on round-the-world expeditions lasting years, and the cars kept running strong. In fact, the G-Wagon is one of the few vehicles that has been trusted in war zones, disaster relief operations, and extreme adventure rallies. If you see a G-Wagon in the middle of nowhere, you can be sure it's there, because no other car could make the journey. It is this blend of toughness, luxury, and timelessness that makes the W463 G-Class one of the most reliable old Mercedes cars that last forever. Even though newer models exist today, the old ones are still in high demand. Enthusiasts pay big money for well-maintained examples, and collectors see them as investments that will only grow in value. Unlike most cars which lose their appeal with age, the G-Class only becomes more desirable. Think about it. How many cars can you buy today, drive for 20 or 30 years, and still sell at a high price? Very few. The G-Wagon is one of them. That's why it is not just a car, it is a legacy. It is a machine built to outlast its owners, a machine that represents Mercedes-Benz engineering at its finest. And whether you are a car enthusiast, an adventurer, or just someone who appreciates quality, the G-Class stands as proof that some things are truly built to last forever. So the next time you see an old G-Wagon rumbling down the street, remember this: you are not just looking at an SUV, you are looking at a piece of history, a living legend, and one of the most reliable old Mercedes cars ever built. And if you enjoyed learning about the indestructible Mercedes G-Class, make sure to stick with us, because in the next part, we will dive into another timeless Mercedes, the mighty S-Class W140, a car that redefined luxury and strength. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, give this video a like, and drop a comment about your favorite Mercedes model, because here on Forever Cars, we celebrate the machines that never die. Mercedes-Benz S-Class W140. When you think about luxury cars, there is one name that has always stood above the rest: the Mercedes-Benz S-Class. For decades, the S-Class has been the benchmark for luxury, technology, and comfort. But among all the generations, there is one that truly earned the nickname the last over-engineered Mercedes. This was the W140, produced between 1991 and 1998. A car so advanced, so strong, and so reliable that even today, nearly 30 years later, people still talk about it with awe. The W140 was not just a luxury car, it was a symbol of power, prestige, and indestructible German engineering. And that is why it remains one of the most reliable old Mercedes cars that truly last forever. The story of the W140 begins in the late 1980s, when Mercedes engineers were tasked with designing the ultimate luxury sedan. The company gave them a simple order: build the best car in the world, cost is no object, and they meant it. Mercedes poured billions of dollars into the development of the W140, testing it for years in every possible condition. The result was a car so advanced and so well built that it shocked the entire automotive world when it was unveiled in 1991. The W140 was massive, both in size and presence. It was wider, longer, and heavier than any S-Class before it. People even nicknamed it the Tank because of its solid, imposing design. When you closed the doors, you didn't just hear a sound, you felt a deep, heavy thunk, like closing the door of a bank vault. Every inch of this car screamed quality and strength. It was not built to a price, it was built to a standard. And that standard was perfection. One of the most legendary aspects of the W140 was its reliability. This car was so over-engineered that it quickly developed a reputation for lasting forever. Take, for example, its engines. The inline-six engines like the M104, the legendary V8s like the M119, and the mighty V12 M120 were all masterpieces of engineering. Built to last hundreds of thousands of kilometers, these engines could run forever with regular maintenance. In fact, there are countless stories of W140s crossing 500,000 kilometers with ease, and many are still running today. As smooth as ever. But it wasn't just the engines. Everything about the W140 was built to last. The suspension was designed to carry the heavy weight of the car while still providing comfort. The transmission was durable and smooth. The interior materials, leather, wood, plastics, were all of the highest quality, built to survive decades of use. Even the buttons and switches had a solid, reassuring feel that modern cars often lack. It was a car designed for people who wanted something that would never let them down. Of course, the W140 was also packed with technology that was ahead of its time. It introduced double-pane insulated glass for the windows, which made the cabin whisper quiet and helped with insulation. It had soft close doors, where you only needed to gently push the door, and the car would automatically pull it shut. It had power windows that slowed down before reaching the top, avoiding that harsh clunk sound. It even had tiny antennas that popped up on the rear fenders to help drivers see the edges of the car while parking. Remember, this was long before parking sensors and cameras became common. The W140 also introduced innovations like stability, control, adaptive damping, and the first use of CAN bus electronics in a Mercedes. These were technologies that would later become standard in the industry, but at the time they were revolutionary. Yet despite all these electronics, the W140 was still incredibly reliable. Unlike modern cars that can suffer from electronic failures, the W140's systems were built with redundancy and durability in mind. This is why so many of these cars are still running today without major issues. Now, let's talk about the driving experience. Behind the wheel, the W140 feels solid and commanding. You don't just drive it, you glide. The ride is smooth, the cabin is quiet, and the car has an aura of stability that makes you feel untouchable. It doesn't matter if you're driving. At 60-kilometer range or 200-kilometer range, the W140 feels rock solid. It's the kind of car that makes long journeys effortless, and that's why it became the car of choice for world leaders, CEOs, and celebrities. If you were someone important in the 1990s, chances are you owned or were chauffeured in a W140 S-Class. In fact, one of the most famous owners of the W140 was none other than Michael Jackson, who used the car extensively during his world tours. Other famous figures, from politicians to royalty, also trusted the W140 because it represented safety, strength, and luxury all in one. That's also why armored versions of the W140 were used by governments around the world, as it provided unmatched protection and reliability. But beyond the fame, what makes the W140 truly timeless is its durability. Even today, if you find a well-maintained W140, it feels just as solid as the day it left the factory. The build quality is something that modern cars rarely match. Many owners say that the W140 feels indestructible, like it was built to outlast. Not just decades, but generations. This is why the W140 is often called the last true Mercedes, before the company shifted towards more cost-cutting in later models. Of course, maintaining a W140 does require care. It is a complex car, and parts can be expensive if you neglect it. But with regular maintenance, these cars can run forever, and that's exactly why enthusiasts still search for them, restoring them, and driving them with pride. A W140 in good condition is not just a car, it is an experience. It is a reminder of a time when Mercedes built cars not for profit margins, but for perfection. The timeless design also plays a big role in the W140's lasting legacy. Its bold square shape may not be as flashy as modern designs, but it has aged gracefully. It still looks powerful and dignified, a car that commands respect wherever it goes. And unlike many cars from the 1990s that now look outdated, the W140 still looks classic and elegant today. If you want proof of the W140's timelessness, Just look at the prices. While many cars from the same era are worth almost nothing today, a well-kept W140 is becoming a collector's item. Enthusiasts are willing to pay good money for clean examples, especially the rare V12 models, because they know these cars are built to last and will only become more valuable over time. Think about it. How many luxury cars from the early 1990s can you buy today and still drive daily without worrying? Very few. The W140 is one of the rare ones. It was built during a golden era when engineers had complete freedom to create the best car possible, and it shows in every detail. That is why owners often keep them for decades, passing them down like family heirlooms. So when people call the W140 the last true Mercedes, they are not exaggerating. This was a car that represented everything the brand stood for: quality, durability, reliability, and prestige. It was built to a standard that modern cars rarely achieve, and for that reason, the W140 remains one of the most reliable old Mercedes cars that will truly last forever. So the next time you see a W140 gliding down the street, remember, you're not just looking at a car, you're looking at a piece of history. You're looking at the last over-engineered Mercedes, a machine that represents the pinnacle of German engineering. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the legendary Mercedes-Benz W140, make sure to stick around for the next part, where we'll explore another timeless Mercedes, the E-Class W124, a car loved around the world for its unstoppable reliability. Don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and drop a comment telling us your favorite S-Class moment, because here on Forever Cars, we celebrate the machines that never die. Mercedes-Benz E-Class W210 with OM606 engine. When people talk about the most reliable cars ever made, there is one name that always comes up: the Mercedes-Benz W124. Produced from 1984 until 1997, this car wasn't just a success, it became a legend. Ask any mechanic, any enthusiast, or even any taxi driver in Europe, Africa, or the Middle East, and they'll tell you the same thing. The W124 is virtually unbreakable. It was a car that could take anything you threw at it: rough roads, endless kilometers, extreme weather, and it would just keep going. And that is why the W124 is remembered today as one of the greatest Mercedes cars ever built, a machine that truly lasts forever. The W124 came at a time when Mercedes-Benz was at the peak of its engineering power. This was the era when the company still followed one simple rule: build the best car, not the cheapest. And it shows in every part of the W124. The design, the materials, the engineering, all were focused on one goal: durability. This was not just a luxury sedan. It was a car built to survive decades of use. From the very first glance, you can see that the W124 was designed to be timeless. Its clean, elegant lines still look classy today. Unlike many cars from the 1980s and 1990s that now look outdated, the W124 has aged beautifully. It has that perfect balance between simplicity and sophistication. This is why even today, more than 30 years later, the W124 still looks dignified and respectable on the road. But the real magic of the W124 lies beneath the skin. Let's start with its engines. The W124 was offered with a wide variety of engines: inline 4s, inline 6s, diesels, and even V8s in later versions. But no matter which engine you chose, they were all designed with longevity in mind. The diesel engines like the OM602 and OM603 are legendary for their ability to run for 1,000,000 kilometers with basic maintenance. These engines were so tough that many W124 diesels are still being used as taxis today, in cities across Africa and the Middle East, carrying passengers every day without ever breaking down. The petrol engines were just as strong. The inline-6 M103 and M104 engines were smooth, powerful, and built to last. Even the smaller four-cylinder engines were reliable workhorses. Mercedes built these engines to be over-engineered, with thick blocks, durable internals, and simple designs that could withstand decades of hard use. It was not uncommon to see W124s with 400,000 or 500,000 kilometers on the clock still running perfectly, and in some cases, Owners didn't even bother opening the engine because it simply didn't need it. But reliability in the W124 wasn't just about the engines. The suspension was designed to handle both comfort and durability. Whether you were driving on smooth German autobahns or rough roads in Africa, the W124 could handle it all. The chassis was incredibly strong, with Mercedes engineers putting in extra reinforcements to make sure the car could survive decades of stress. Even the little details were built to last. The doors had that solid Mercedes thunk. The interior plastics were of the highest quality, resisting cracks and wear even after years under the sun. The switches, buttons and knobs all had a satisfying weight, a reminder that you were in a car built to last. Another thing that made the W124 so special was its practicality. It was offered in many different body styles: sedan, coupe, convertible and wagon. The wagon version, in particular, became famous for its durability and cargo capacity. Families loved it, businesses used it, and in some countries it became the ultimate workhorse. The rear seats folded flat, giving you massive space, and the suspension was strong enough to carry heavy loads without problems. The W124 also introduced several innovations that were ahead of its time. For example, it was one of the first cars to feature a multi-link rear suspension, which improved both comfort and handling. It was also among the first to offer airbags and ABS brakes, which were still new technology in the 1980s. But what makes these features impressive is that Mercedes implemented them in a way that didn't compromise reliability. Unlike many modern cars that break down due to complex electronics, the W124's systems were designed to be simple, strong, and long-lasting. Driving a W124 is an experience in itself. It doesn't feel flashy or overly luxurious, but it feels right. Everything works as it should. The ride is smooth and the car feels incredibly stable. It gives you a sense of confidence, the feeling that no matter where you go, this car will take care of you. That is why people trusted the W124 not just as a family car, but also as a taxi, a business car, and even as a daily workhorse in tough environments. One of the most famous reputations of the W124 came from its role as a taxi in Europe. In countries like Germany, these cars were used by taxi drivers for decades. Many of them racked up over 1 million kilometers without ever needing a major rebuild. Think about that. Over 1 million kilometers. That's the kind of reliability that modern cars can only dream of. And it wasn't just in Europe. In Africa, W124s became legendary for their ability to handle rough terrain, poor fuel quality, and extreme heat. Even in those tough conditions, they just kept running. The W124 was also respected by enthusiasts around the world. The performance models, like the 500e built in collaboration with Porsche, became icons in their own right. With a V8 engine and incredible build quality, the 500e showed that the W124 could be both a reliable workhorse and an exciting performance machine. But even the standard models had their own charm. They weren't flashy, but they were honest cars, built to a standard that made people fall in love with them. Today, the W124 has achieved a kind of cult status. Enthusiasts hunt for clean examples, restoring them and keeping them alive. Prices for well-maintained W124s are rising because people know how good these cars are. And unlike many classics, owning a W124 doesn't feel like a gamble. If you buy one in good condition and take care of it, it will serve you faithfully for decades more. That is the kind of timeless reliability that very few cars in history can offer. Another reason why the W124 remains loved is because it represents the philosophy of old Mercedes-Benz. Back then, the company wasn't trying to cut costs or maximize profits at every corner. They were focused on building the best. And the W124 is the perfect example of that philosophy. Every part of it was made with care, every detail considered, and the result was a car that has stood the test of time better than almost any other. The W124 also became a symbol of trust. Around the world, people associated it with safety, durability, and respect. If you drove a W124, people knew you had a car that wouldn't let you down. It wasn't about showing off. It was about owning something truly dependable. Even after all these years, the W124 remains relevant. In a world full of modern cars packed with fragile electronics, the W124 stands as a reminder of what real engineering looks like. It's a car that proves that simplicity, quality, and durability will always outlast complexity and cost-cutting. And that is why the W124 is more than just a classic Mercedes. It's a legend, a car that has touched the lives of millions of people, and one that will continue to run long into the future. So, when people ask why the W124 is one of the most reliable Mercedes cars ever built, the answer is simple. Because it was built with heart, built with passion, and built to last forever. It wasn't designed to impress for a few years and then be replaced. It was designed to serve faithfully for decades, and that's exactly what it has done. If you ever get the chance to own or drive a W124, you'll understand immediately. The way it feels, the way it drives, the way it stands strong, even after all these years, it's an experience like no other, and that's why here on Forever Cars we celebrate it as one of the timeless classics that will never die. So, the next time you see a W124 on the road, remember, you're not just looking at an old Mercedes. You're looking at a legend, a machine that has carried millions of people, crossed millions of kilometers, and proven itself again and again as one of the most reliable cars ever made. Truly, the Mercedes-Benz W124 is a forever car, and that concludes our journey through 3 of the most reliable old Mercedes cars that last forever. From the unstoppable G-Class W463 to the overengineered S-Class W140, and finally the indestructible E-Class W124, these cars prove that true engineering never dies. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Because here we celebrate cars that aren't just machines, they're legends, cars that last forever.